Chapter 168, Foreboding Crisis. Last Chen, this young noble had been frustrated by your wretched song and I am feeling extremely sleepy. Go back and make the bed, this young noble wants to rest for a while. Hurry up. Ling Tian interrupted at this very inappropriate moment. Zhou Yanzu was almost angered to death, such a magnificent song being insulted as such. Darn Ling Tian, while she had the heart to make a scene, she was presently in the Ling residence, and Ling Chen was indeed Ling Tian's maid. No matter how he chose to command his maid, it didn't seem right for her to say anything. Ms. Zhou, my young noble has some instructions for Ling Chen. May Miss Zhou forgive me? Ling Chen said with a bow. While this was a bow from a maid to her master, there was a tinge of elegance and nobility within it. How would Zhou Yanzu be willing to witness such a beauty perform the duties of a maid? Helpless, she could only reply, Sister Ling Chen doesn't need to be so polite. Yanzu was at fault for making an uninvited visit and will be taking my leave. I hope that I will have a chance to hear Sister's celestial melody again. Seeing Zhou Yanzu's figure disappear from the entrance of the courtyard, Ling Tian laughed and entered the room. How close! I almost allowed that Zhou Yanzu to have a handle on me. Ling Chen then responded with a gentle smile, young noble, it wouldn't matter if Miss Zhou knows. After all, don't the Zhou family head already know about how you're extraordinary? Why is there a need to act like this? Ling Tian replied with a smile, that's different. While the Ling and Zhou families are cordial on the surface, both the families have their own intentions. It would be impossible to predict how the future will turn out. In fact, if not for the fact that I didn't have enough strength on my hands and had a great need to develop my strength, I wouldn't be willing to expose my strength to that old man. In such a sensitive time, where all the various powers are gathered in the sky-bearing city, Zhou Yanzu definitely has her motives for coming. Even if she hears about my abilities from her grandfather, she may not believe him. But if she were to witness it for herself and knows about my affairs, all of her plans would probably be against our Ling family. Chenner, do you want me to drag my family into danger just because of the heart of a lady? Ling Chen was startled as she whined, young noble, you obviously know that this isn't my intention. Ling Tian laughed and said seriously, to wield all authority under the heavens and have the company of beauties all around him is the dream of all men. However, there is a sequence to these two phrases. Only after wielding all authority under the heavens can one be surrounded by beauties. The sequence of this must definitely not be mixed up. Ling Chen responded with a and looked as though she was considering Ling Tian's words. Ling Tian laughed and sat on the couch. Chenner, are there any news from the Ling family courtyard? If young noble did not ask me, I would have forgotten about it. Ling Chen smiled. However, Ling Tian completely ignored that phrase of hers. This was definitely a complete joke. Ever since Ling Chen followed him 10 years ago, she had never forgotten about anything. As though she was performing a magic trick, a few strips of paper appeared in her hand. Unrolling the first strip, she said, this is from Ling Shi. We have already caught 327 young sparrows which the young noble requested, and they are on the way to the Ling family courtyard. Ling Tian then praised, not bad, this Ling Shi is becoming more and more capable. When he comes back, this young noble will give him a good reward. Why not you relay the blade works, which he had been eyeing on, to him? Ling Chen giggled, if Shi hears about this, he probably won't be able to fall asleep for the next few days. Then, she opened up another slip of paper. Due to the once-in-a-100 years rain yesterday, a few parties may be delayed. This is from Ling Ba. The ambassadors from the Western Han will arrive at the sky-bearing city by noon tomorrow at the latest. The person leading them is the number 2 figure of the Ximen family, Ximen Buruo. His assistant is Han Tai Hong from the Western Han imperial family. Following their entourage is the number 1 expert from the Ximen family, Ximen Wuhan. Ling Tian's eyes narrowed as he responded with a soft "oh." "This piece of news is from Ling Jian. Those from Eastern Zhou should be here by tomorrow afternoon. The one in charge is Dongfang Jinglei, clan brother of the Eastern Zhou Emperor. He is also a general in the Eastern Zhou army, and have a pair of expert twin brothers under him, He Chu Lai and He Chu Ku." Ling Tian then smiled. He Chu Lai? He Chu Ku? The names of these two brothers are interesting indeed. I wonder if they can be compared to the Zhu Ling and Zuf brothers of the Yu family. Ling Chen burst out into laughter as she imagined the scene of both the twins meeting. She then could not help but squat down from the laughter. Ling Tian made a resolution in his heart to make the four of them sit on the same table facing each other, so he would be able to see their differences. Ling Qi says that those from the Wu Empire will arrive at the sky-bearing city tomorrow afternoon. Their ambassador is Beiming King Tian from the Beiming family. Following them is the expert from the Beiming family, Beiming Kong. Ling Tian opened his eyes as a divine light shone. There aren't any ordinary folks coming from all the different powers. This time, things will be interesting. Send a message to the three of them. Send me all the information regarding Ximen Biruo, Ximen Wuhen, Dongfang Jinglei, Beiming King Tian and Beiming Kong. Ling Chen then acknowledged the order. There is a piece of news from the first pavilion. It is from Ling Qi. Ling Tian was stunned for a moment. Why is it from Ling Qi? What about Ling Jian? Ling Chen unrolled the piece of paper and smiled. Ling Kai's letter was to explain this matter. The first pavilion received a job to assassinate the wealthy merchant in the Yan region, Zhang Deshuai. Since Ling Jian was feeling bored, he made the trip personally. Ling Yan burst out into laughter. Looks handsome. Ha ha ha, after meeting Ling Jian, he probably won't be handsome any longer. Ling Tian had never been worried about Ling Jian's capabilities. In the past 5 years, Ling Jian had never disappointed him before, and this time wouldn't be an exception either. But it probably isn't because Ling Jian was feeling bored. It seems like the right time for those little fellows to make a breakthrough. Ling Tian said with contemplation. Ling Chen was also amused by the merchant's name, bursting out into giggles. Ling Tian then began to frown. Yan region, that's in the north, right? The Yan region which shares a border with northern Wei? Ling Chen looked at Ling Tian with a doubtful gaze. Yes, it is that Yan region. It is said that this Mr. Handsome is the tyrant of the Yan region. He would oppress the people in the region, committing all sort of atrocities. This time, he wants to marry the only daughter of a wealthy merchant as his concubine, and this mission was issued by the in-law family supposed to marry this lady. Ling Tian responded with a no. For some unknown reason, he felt an inexplicable stifling feeling in his heart. As he stood up and paced around the room, he felt as though he could not suppress that feeling of frustration. Are there any news from the Yu family? Ling Tian suddenly asked without thinking. There aren't any. It seems like the Yu family isn't interested in the matters of the sky-bearing city. They may not be coming to the sky-bearing city at all. Ling Chen replied. Oh. Ling Tian frowned as the warning sirens began to go off in his head. Pacing around the room again, he asked, how long has Ling Jian been gone for? Let me see. Ling Chen opened the piece of paper from Ling Qi and replied, Ling Jian left at noon yesterday. Noon yesterday? With a distance of less than 500 miles, Ling Jian should already be done with his speed. Why is there no news? The ominous feeling in Ling Tian's heart grew as he felt his heart beat harder. Perhaps he may have been delayed by the heavy rain. Ling Jian's martial arts improved recently and a mere tyrant shouldn't give him any problems. Ling Chen said with a doubtful tone. Looking at Ling Tian's expression, she could not help but grow worried about Ling Jian. How could a mere rain stop Ling Jian? Ling Tian denied that explanation without hesitation. Ling Jian had always been direct and efficient in his actions, and Ling Tian knew that Ling Jian would never delay matters. For such a simple mission, Just how much of an effort would it require? Send my command to Ling Ji, report any news about Ling Jian to me immediately. Just when Ling Chen wanted to walk away, Ling Tian stopped her and said, Inform Ling Ji that he must give me an hourly report whether or not he has any news. He must not delay the matter. Seeing Ling Chen carry out his orders, Ling Tian sat on the chair slowly, feeling his mood grow disorderly. This was Ling Tian's intuition. As long as this intuition appears, something big would happen for sure. This was tried and tested, without any doubts at all. As time passed slowly, all the news from the Ling family courtyard had been the same, no news of Ling Jian. Another 4 hours passed again. At this time, the unease in Ling Tian's heart grew and he decided to stop waiting. Stay at home and I will go and take a look. Before Ling Chen could reply him, Ling Tian had already flown out. While Zhou Yanzu was able to find the person who blew the flute, the outcome was something completely disappointing. How could she let the matter rest like that? Standing in the yard, her brows were furrowed for a long time before she let out a long sigh and wanted to walk back to her room. She even had the heart to buy Ling Chen over from Ling Tian at a high price. But not to mention whether or not Ling Tian would be willing to sell her. Even if he was willing to sell her, it would be an insult to a great expert like Ling Chen. Despite trying her best, she just could not come up with a plan. All of a sudden, the neigh of a horse sounded as a black horse sprinted out, sprinting in the Ling residence at full speed. With a look, Zhou Yanzu saw that the person on the horse was a suave young man with sword-like brows and a pristine white robe. Who else could it be but Ling Tian? She could not help but sneer in her heart, he is indeed a silk pants. He actually let his horse sprint at such speed in his own mansion. Twitching her lips with disdain, she wanted to turn around and return to her room. However, she suddenly realized that something was wrong with Ling Tian's expression. Looking at his face, she saw his worry-filled eyes and her heart shook. This pair of eyes are so familiar. Where have I seen them before? Before she had a chance to think about it, the black horse had already flown past her side. At the gates of the Ling mansion, how would the guards dare delay as they saw Ling Tian speeding out? They quickly dodged to the side as the healthy horse flew into the air and dashed out of the gates with the crisp sound of a horse whip. Chapter 169, Ling Jian taking action. At this moment, Ling Jian was hiding in a gigantic tree with the thickness of 3 to 4 people combined. He was at least 30 to 40 feet above the ground, waiting for a sure kill moment to strike. This was the first lesson of a killer: wait for the best opportunity. Below him was a small village, and the young lady who Zhang Deshui wanted to marry was the daughter of a wealthy merchant. After receiving the mission a few days ago and definite news yesterday, the idol Ling Jian had unexpectedly decided to take action personally to kill a mere tyrant. Of course, this was because Feng, Yan, Lei, Dian and Qi had received special training from Ling Tian and Ling Chen before Ling Jian came back. They all had comprehensions from the training and were in a state of sudden enlightenment. Especially Ling Qi, where his improvement speed could be said to be lightning fast. At this present moment, he was already at a crucial point of the 4th stage of the Divine Shocking Dragon formula, with his improvement being even faster than Ling Jian. Sudden enlightenment. As a martial cultivator, Ling Jian was deeply aware of how rare of an opportunity this was for his little brothers. If they were to be disrupted at this moment, it was possible that they would never be able to advance a step further for all their life. The state of sudden enlightenment was an opportunity which could not be sought. Such a state was like a modern-day scientist having a flash of brilliant wisdom, with an idea coming into one's mind. If such an opportunity was missed, it would be extremely possible for him to lose that important chance. Currently, Feng, Yan, Lei, Dian and Qi were in such a special state. The moment their eyes were opened and mind enlightened, their strength would take another huge leap forward. Be it their martial skills, inner qi cultivation or the sharpness of their senses, they would definitely experience a huge leap in them all. Presently, Ling Jian was protecting them all like little babies. How would it be possible for him to let such a small mission disrupt their cultivation? Young noble is young noble indeed. He isn't someone who I can ever compare to. A trace of respect could be seen in Ling Jian's grim eyes. In the past few years, Ling Jian had always pushed the lot of them to the brink of death, but never saw much improvement in them. However, his young noble only gave them pointers for a few days and every one of them looked as though they were in a state of sudden enlightenment. As Ling Jian was filled with admiration for the young noble, he also could not help but feel a sense of dejectedness. While he did lay a strong foundation in them and they were all at the brink of breaking through, they would definitely require a long while more if no one were to guide them through this crucial phase. Thinking about this, Ling Jian could not help but let out a self-depreciating smile. What was I thinking about? The young noble is as knowledgeable as the saints, his wisdom like the vast oceans. How can I ever hope to compare up to him? For something that I will require a few years to accomplish, it is only right for the young noble to accomplish them in a few days. Now that the five of them were about to experience a breakthrough, Ling Jian felt happy for them from the bottom of his heart. Their breakthrough would signify a large increase in strength for the first pavilion. After the Yu family incident, Ling Jian had deeply understood that his present capabilities were far from sufficient. Now that his brothers had such an opportunity, not to mention an insignificant mission, he wouldn't allow anything to disrupt their cultivations, even if he had to place his life on the line. Once their strengths have all improved, I will definitely bring them to fight that Yu family. What number one hidden sect, bullshit? Ling Jian thought to himself as a cruel smile could be seen on his face. The once-in-100 years rain from last night did not hinder Ling Jian in the slightest. The second lesson of an assassin, never be hindered by the environment or sudden change in situation. Ling Jian had already arrived here at midnight and wanted to rush straight to the Yan region to settle this tyrant with a single sword. However, the huge rain had unexpectedly caused a sharp rise in the river waters, destroying the wooden bridge from the surging currents. Thus, he would not be able to cross the river. If he were to go around the river, he would definitely take a few more hours. But if that's the case, it would be much more convenient for him to just wait for his prey here. Worldly affairs were like a game of chess, unpredictable and ever-changing. Some huge events were born from these seemingly insignificant events. From afar, the sound of drumming and music could be heard drawing nearer. That Zhang Deshui has finally arrived. I just wonder, how handsome is he exactly? Can he be even more suave than this assassin here? Under the influence of Ling Tian, be it Ling Jian, Ling Qi or the rest, they were extremely certain that they were the most handsome person apart from their young noble. A light flashed in Ling Jian's eyes and he thought to himself, I can't be bothered if you are handsome or not. From today on, you are only a pile of meaningless meat. Your name should be changed from Zhang Deshui to Zhang Delan! Now that the time to part was near, the family, which wasn't too far away from the tree, began to cry bitterly. Their beautiful young miss was about to be sent into the mouth of a tiger. How could their family not be overwhelmed with depression? The music and drumming approached speedily, obviously displaying how impatient Zhang Deshui was. A short while later, they had already entered the village and the crazed sounds of dogs barking were mixed into the drums and music, sounding extremely disharmonious. From afar, Ling Jian could already see the appearance of that Mr. Zhang Deshui and he could not help but have the urge to let out a spit of disgust. The ugly do indeed create more mischief. A guy like him, black like charcoal, fat like a pig and short like a ball, actually dares to call himself Zhang Deshui? Even that black horse which he is riding on is much suaver than him. With his loser-like appearance, I will definitely make him look like a loser later. Ling Jian could not help but feel pity for his employer. If he had seen this fellow earlier on, just because of the disgusting name this fellow had, he would have definitely taught this fellow a good lesson. While the fault of his name lay in his parents, and the fault of his figure lay with the genes of his parents, the combination of these two factors in a single person made him look completely revolting. Closer, even closer. As long as you walk another 50 feet, it would be hell for you. Looking at that revolting face, Ling Jian held on to the hilt of his sword. Ling Tian felt that he was extremely lucky today. That huge rain had actually begun to stop gradually after he left the Yu family's mansion. Furthermore, the weather was extremely good today and he even met a joyous occasion along the way. This was an auspicious sign. While this groom did not look too pleasant, and he looked like he was more than 50 years old. However, this was still a joyous occasion. Furthermore, he met them when he had just entered the borders of the sky-bearing empire. Ling Tian was in an extremely pleasant mood because this not-so-good-looking person had invited him to attend the banquet. Note from author, it was mainly because this fellow was just too popular with the crowd. No one dared to attend his wedding at all, and so Third Master Yu was there to just fill in the numbers. Third Master Yu was feeling rather pleased in his heart, giving his blessings to this new couple in his heart. Hopefully, this groom wouldn't die from excitement as they consummate their marriage. Originally, Third Master Yu was rather depressed from the conversation he had with his big brother yesterday night. In the eyes of Big Brother, both second brother and I actually cannot be compared to that young Silk Pants. This is unforgivable. As he thought about his big brother saying, "You are not allowed to call him Silk Pants. If he is a Silk Pants, what can you two be considered to be?" Yu Manlu felt indignance in his heart. If that's the case, I will go and give this young hero a good beating to let Big Brother take a good look. Lest you look down on me. We are all top-notch experts. However, this joyous occasion had instantly brightened up the mood of this muddle-headed Ling Tian. It seems like things will definitely go my way in the sky-bearing empire this time. The heavens are favoring me, with the rain stopping and a joyous occasion in front of me. Just when Ling Tian was about to give his blessings to the groom, he suddenly felt that something was amiss, as a sense of danger began to overwhelm him. To a martial arts fanatic like Ling Tian who had been through thousands of battles, such a feeling was extremely familiar to him. Can there be an ambush somewhere? Furthermore, the opponent seems to be a rather skilled assassin. Right at this moment, the large fatty had walked to Ling Tian's side on his horse, not bothering to spare Ling Tian a single glance. He had a licentious smile on his face as some glittering strands seemed to be hanging off his mouth. That was actually saliva. Ling Tian, who wanted to give his blessings, immediately felt an urge to puke. All of a sudden, a figure descended from above like lightning, with the sword in his hand letting out a resplendent luster, unleashing an uncontrollable wave of killing intent. His target was the groom on the horse, Zhang Deshuai. As a killer, regardless of whether your target was an unparalleled expert or ordinary person, one must definitely give it his all in the first strike to kill in a single attack. He must not give the enemy the chance to even catch his breath. This was something which Ling Tian had always reminded Ling Jian. Towards everything that Ling Tian said, Ling Jian had always followed it unconditionally. Thus, Ling Jian had used everything he had in this attack. Ling Jian's intentions was to decapitate the enemy with a single sword and leaving the place immediately without a trace. Lest he delays the important affairs of his young noble in the capital. However, the luck of this Zhang Deshuai was just far too good. Ling Tian suddenly felt as though the space around him seemed to be completely sucked dry as this black-dressed figure appeared. Everything had been gathered on that long sword. A top-notch assassin. A top-notch expert. Chapter 170, Battle Between Behemoths. As though acting out of instinct, Ling Tian flipped himself up. At the same time, the sword from his waist radiating the colors of the rainbow as it shot towards the peerless expert, the man in black. While this sword was cast out in haste, the strength behind it was no laughing matter. This old man finally got a chance to come out and even had the chance to enjoy a joyous occasion. With everyone in such a good mood, how could I allow the bridegroom to get killed? If I did, then what am I serving as an overseer for? Did anyone even invite him to be an overseer? In addition, Third Master Ling Tian felt an adrenaline rush, because the sword moves that Ling Jian displayed were definitely out of the ordinary. Such an opponent wasn't easy to find except by a chance encounter. While his family possessed many experts, none of them were willing to put their lives on the line, so how could Ling Tian let go of this chance? He even had a good reason not to let it go. Wipe out all the injustice along my path. Ha ha ha, what a hero I am. Ling Tian's ego was suddenly significantly inflated. Too bad my brother isn't here to see this. Hidden behind a black mask, Ling Jian's eyes could not help but narrow. To think that this fatty had someone of such caliber beside him. Thank God he didn't call over Ling Qi and the rest. Just based on the first movement of his sword, Ling Jian could see that the man surpassed him in most if not all aspects. If Ling Qi and the rest were here, they would only be sacrificial lambs and fall under his sword. If anything untoward happened to his underlings, he and the young noble would definitely die of heartbreak. The sword in Ling Jian's hands twirled, meeting head-on with the other incoming sword. His eyes remained expressionless, and in his heart he thought, be it the ugly fatty Zhang the Shui or an expert, there's no difference. Be it commoners, experts or even Buddha, those who stand against me are my enemies. The lust for battle soared high inside Ling Tian, and he hollered out, well met. As he further increased the strength behind his sword. Clang! An ear-splitting noise reverberated as the two swords met. The violent forces from the two swords spilled out over all their surroundings, causing strong winds to blow everywhere. Those leading the bridal procession were only commoners, so how could they withstand this blow? All of them were blown off in a heap, and even the bridegroom Zhang the Shui was knocked off his horse, bouncing off the ground like a ball when he landed. A series of alarmed cries sounded. Whether it was the bridegroom's relatives or the bride's relatives, the drums and gongs which were beating had long been dropped to the ground as their faces turned white with shock. Ling Tian only felt a burst of numbness overcome his hands, an immense force pushing against him. He couldn't help but frown a little, hurriedly retreating 3 steps before he stabilized himself. As for Ling Jian, who had attacked from the skies like a meteor dropping down, he continuously somersaulted in the air a good 7 to 8 times before he dissipated Ling Tian's force and gently landed on the ground. His face had already turned pale. Awesome! Ling Tian laughed out boldly. It has been too long since I could exchange swords equally with someone. To actually have strength close to the white jade stage, your foundations are good, kid. Please state your name, so that this third master knows who you are. Ling Jian, however, remained silent. As though he disdained from speaking, his body suddenly flashed forward like a specter, covering the 800-odd feet of distance between them in the blink of an eye. His speed was so fast that after-images actually appeared behind him. While the audience was gazing dumbfoundedly, Ling Jian's sword had already appeared in front of Ling Tian, striking him from all angles like a torrential downpour. It was as though he had not heard what Ling Tian had said. Third Master? Laughable. Other than showing respects to my young noble, I, Ling Jian, have never even addressed anyone with the name of Master. What kind of thing are you, to order me to call you a master? Tell that to King Yama. Ding 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 ding. The relentless sounds of metal striking metal seemed to have been chained into a continuous stream of noise. Ling Tian was at full attention, countering every move with his body revolving around the spot as he followed Ling Jian's constantly moving sword. He didn't even get the chance to be angry over Ling Jian's lack of an answer to him. In the eyes of the onlookers, Ling Tian seemed like a breakwater resisting solidly against the violent waves, standing firm without any weakness. In his surroundings was a black shadow constantly in quick motion, now near then far, now left then right, unpredictable and untraceable like an apparition. A faint shadow shot up towards the clouds, climbing up at least 40 feet into the air. That was precisely the shadow of Ling Jian, and at the apex he flipped himself upside down, sword facing the ground as he dropped straight down. On its way down, the sword in Ling Jian's hands underwent several transformations. From 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 giving rise to 9, the swords multiplied rapidly, quickly filling up the sky and all pointing in the same direction. The swords then rotated faster and faster, looking like a 1,000-armed demon as they plunged down from the heavens. What insane sword skills! To think that such miraculous skills exist in this world. It was one thing to have good internal energy, but to actually have such a set of sword skills, how frightening! Ling Tian's eyes lit up with a savage light. However, he did not dare underestimate his opponent. With a stomp of his foot, the internal energy in his body was gathered onto his sword, and at the same time, a snow-white lotus blossomed beneath him. The tips of the lotus were as sharp as swords and revolved constantly, turning to face the threat above. Compressed sounds of metal against metal rang out, just like the sound of popcorn popping as the two of them made contact. Droplets of fresh blood dripped slowly onto the ground. Ling Tian had the eyes of a hawk as he stared down the opponent in front of him, his breathing heavy. A faint trail of blood could be seen above his eyebrows, and his sleeve had been torn at the shoulder, with fresh blood slowly seeping out. On the other side, Ling Jian's skinny body stood ramrod straight even as a profuse flow of blood came from his left shoulder and right arm. His eyes were cold, almost to the point of being crazed. An intense killing intent was radiating from him. 3 confrontations in a row. Ling Jian was well aware that this straightforward bearded man possessed martial skills that were far above his own. In fact, he might even be on par with the young noble. If they were to continue sparring, so long as enough time passed, he would definitely be at a disadvantage, and could potentially lose his life. No, in his current situation, he might not even get a proper chance to escape. This man was the strongest expert he had come across so far, an enemy that could not be shaken off. Unless he could ignore the outcome of his mission and head back immediately, he would not be able to guarantee his life. He had prepared a surefire way to success and suddenly attacked. But for the first time, someone had actually managed to repel all his attacks, making him retreat with no gains. Even though the man was at a disadvantage for the first round, it was negligible, and didn't affect him in the slightest. Shortly after, Ling Jian made use of the exquisite footwork his young noble had taught him to quickly launch his second attack. As before, the man was put at a disadvantage, but the end result was still the same. If not for the young noble's ingenious movement skills, Ling Jian would have ended up at a disadvantage instead. However, in the third round, both of them started on an equal footing. Then, even though he was the one to initiate the attack, he was the one who suffered a heavier injury. Thus, strictly speaking, he was the one who had lost the match. Furthermore, the purity and volume of the man's internal energy were miles above his. He had only used a few sneaky moves to gain a small advantage. His moves were exchanged in a manner such that he was sacrificing his life to obtain victory, and yet his opponent actually had zero intention to kill. He completely treated his duel as a friendly competition, and from this, the disparity between them could really be seen. This sort of opponent was definitely out of his league. How was he supposed to continue fighting? Despite that, Ling Jian didn't have a shred of thought about retreating. The name of the first pavilion definitely could not be destroyed in his hands. The first pavilion had yet to face a task that they could not complete, neither had they faced a target which they could not kill. Even if the guy in front of him was a tier stronger than him, able to silence him in an instant, he still had to silence Zhang Deshuai. There was no room for compromise. The lives of all humans are in my hands, the winds and rains heed the first pavilion. This was the name the noble had personally bestowed upon them, the first pavilion, and the meaning was obvious. To be the young noble's personal aide as well as his brother in arms, he was his sword as well as the pavilion head of the first pavilion. Ling Jian felt the blood boiling within him, as a sense of pride could be felt rushing from the depths of his heart. His originally expressionless eyes suddenly turned bloodshot, and endless waves of killing intent madly rushed out from within him. Kill! An earth-shattering scream sounded. This was the first time Ling Jian spoke, and only this one word. This was also the only word Ling Jian had spoken in the past 2 days. While it was only a word, this represented his internal will to fight. Facing the masked man, Ling Tian suddenly felt his heart palpitating. The cold sweat trickling off his back was enough to actually form a continuous stream. What a fearsome killer, what fearsome killing intent! In these 3 exchanges, Ling Tian had felt the very real possibility of death at least 8 different times. The scariest thing was that after the series of confrontations, Ling Tian had determined that his opponent was only of the lower white jade stage, at least 2 levels below him. He himself was of Xiantian cultivation, at the peak of lower gold jade stage. Based on the calculations of the Yu family, this put him 3 tiers higher than his opponent. Furthermore, he was confident that those who outranked him in the world could be counted on his 2 hands. However, this black-robed man before him, without his Xiantian realm cultivation as well as being at the lower white jade stage, could actually use his eccentric movement skills, vicious swordplay, and billowing killing intent to make up for the differences between their cultivation. The thought that this assassin was actually able to stand against him was unimaginable. Ling Tian fully believed that if he made a single mistake, it would be enough to prevent him from seeing the sunset ever again. Chapter 171, I am an assassin. Ling Tian couldn't help but think to himself, if this man dressed in black was at the Xiantian stage as well, just how many moves of his would I be able to block? Thinking about that, Ling Tian began to break out into a cold sweat. That surging killing intent, those bloodthirsty eyes, and that ferocity which paid no heed to life or death. Ling Tian was certain in his heart, while the cultivation of this man in black is comparable to a low-grade white jade cultivator of my Yu family, any of those low-grade white jade cultivators would definitely be killed with a single strike. Even for someone like the second elder of the middle grade or other high-grade cultivators, would they be able to triumph over him? He was completely uncertain. After all, even he was struggling when crossing blows with this black-dressed man. Since when was there a top-notch assassin like this in the world? From his body figure, the look in his eyes and his skin tone, this person was definitely no more than 25 years old. Such a young man with such powerful skills. This was just too mind-blowing. In that moment, both parties each had their own plans. Standing opposite each other, they glared at each other, their gaze like divine lights clashing in midair. Hero, kill him. I will give you 10,000 taels of silver. Zhang Deshuai stammered and then shouted this out from the side. His pair of pig-like eyes revealed the fear in his heart. When Ling Jian's sword had previously charged at him, Zhang Deshuai felt as though his whole body was trembling, and it was the first time in his life when he felt that death was near. Regardless of the price he had to pay, he wanted this black-dressed man to perish right here. If not, the rest of his life would definitely be a nightmare. This burly man who had saved him from the brink of death was the best person for the mission. Zhang Deshuai thought to himself, regardless of how many taels of silver I have to spend, I must definitely hire this burly man into my residence to be the head of my guards. If Ling Tian knew what this guy was thinking about, without Ling Jian moving a muscle, Ling Tian would definitely skin this pig-like groom alive. I am the 3rd master of the Yu family. A top-notch expert in the world today. FK. Be a guard for you? Which emperor would accept such treatment? However, the only effect from Zhang Deshuai's words was a look of disdain from Ling Tian. After the previous exchange they had, both of them felt that life and death could be determined in an instant as danger lurked all around them. Ling Tian began to grow excited as a competitive spirit was ignited in his heart. For a martial fanatic like him to meet an opponent at his level, death would be a worthy price to pay for an all-out and unrestrained battle. With passion in his eyes, Ling Tian asked, "Sir, there are many people here and our fight would become nothing more than a circus show for all those present. Why don't we find another spot to have a good battle? If you win, I will ignore everything that is happening here." Out of respect for his opponent, Ling Tian had refrained from his habit of calling himself Third Master. With a glimmer in his eyes, Ling Jian looked at the feverish Ling Tian and replied with a nod. Ling Tian let out a hearty laugh and said, "Sir, you are indeed straightforward as well. Please." Ling Jian stretched out his hands, as though he was asking Ling Tian to lead the way. Ling Tian let out a laugh and walked towards his horse. Suddenly, he wondered if the other party had a horse, and turned around to ask, "Do you?" Before he was able to finish his sentence he saw a bright flash and heard a loud shriek. As Ling Tian looked over, he was immediately enraged. 30 feet away, Zhang Deshuai's round and fat head had a sword pierced through it, nailing him to the wall. Looking back at Ling Tian, his hands were empty with his sword missing. Obviously, Ling Jian had made use of the opening created when Ling Tian turned around to instantly kill Zhang Deshuai. "You!" Ling Tian let out a loud roar of rage. While the word was still "you," his tone and attitude were worlds apart. Despicable. Ling Jian actually killed someone who was under his protection. Although he only chose to protect Zhang Deshuai at the spur of the moment and wasn't serious about it, Ling Tian was still furious when he saw Zhang Deshuai die in front of him. This was far too detrimental to his reputation. "You must definitely die, you despicable beast rogue who insulted my martial way." For the first time, Ling Tian looked towards Ling Jian with intense killing intent in his eyes. Ling Jian walked indifferently past Ling Tian to the front of Zhang Deshuai's corpse. Reaching out to his sword, he lightly pulled it out and blood spewed out all around. Zhang Deshuai's pig-like face now had a hollow hole through it. Whether as a ghost or a human, he would never be handsome-looking again. The followers of Zhang Deshuai who were originally on the ground let out a shriek and ran for their lives. After cleaning the blood from his sword, Ling Jian slowly turned around and calmly looked at Ling Tian. With a trace of ridicule in his eyes, he said his first complete sentence, "I am an assassin." Assassin? Ling Tian was completely speechless. This was his opponent's job. He would naturally have his own occupational rules. Did Ling Tian really expect an assassin to play by the rules? Ling Tian couldn't help but feel depressed in his heart. Ling Tian then got on his horse and said with a chilly look, "Please." While it was still the same word, this "please" was filled with killing intent. This person is a cold-blooded killer. If he were to remain alive, how many more people would die by his hands? Today, I, Third Master Yu, will be a hero for once and serve justice for the heavens. Ling Jian was still expressionless, suddenly turning around to slice off Zhang Deshuai's head. As a black cloth shot out from his hands, that head was instantly wrapped up within it. His actions were swift and well practiced, as though he had done something not worth mentioning at all. He then said calmly, "May we meet again?" Without waiting for a reply, he leapt onto the groom's black horse and prepared to leave. Ling Jian's mission was already completed, so why would he have any interest in continuing to fight Ling Tian? He would probably be interested in doing so under normal circumstances. After all, just how many experts were there in the world? But at such a crucial moment, it wasn't the time for Ling Jian to act as he wished. After such careful planning and execution, the heroes of the continent were gathered in the sky-bearing city, and Ling Tian was about to execute a huge plan. Ling Tian would definitely require the aid of Ling Jian as well. While Ling Jian couldn't be bothered with his own life, If he were to lose his life in the battle with Ling Tian, it would be a cardinal sin to influence his young noble's plans. As long as things were related to his young noble's plans, Ling Jian would never ruin Ling Tian's plan because of a moment of folly. Therefore Ling Jian chose to leave directly. From the previous exchange, Ling Jian already knew that while Ling Tian was skilled in the martial arts with his inner qi being much more powerful than himself, Ling Tian's movement techniques were far from comparable to his. If they were to compete in a long-distance race, Ling Jian would lose for sure. But if they were to compete in a short-distance sprint or in concealing and tracking techniques, Ling Jian would definitely win. If he wanted to retreat, this burly man in front of him would definitely not be able to stop him. However, Ling Jian was still disappointed for letting go of such an opportunity to spar with an expert. That is why he said, "May we meet again. The mountains and river would meet eventually, and I, Ling Jian, will definitely meet you again. At that time, let us complete this unfinished battle." Ling Jian thought to himself with a tinge of regret. As for the fact that he had agreed to spar, Ling Jian was completely unbothered about it. The so-called rules of the pugilistic world were a complete joke to an assassin like Ling Jian. They were only a means for him to slaughter Zhang Deshuai. In regard to this, Ling Jian didn't feel that he had done anything wrong. As an assassin, his target was the #1 priority. Anything else shouldn't be considered at all. The most fundamental law of an assassin. Ling Tian's body trembled with anger. He was not an assassin but a martial cultivator who kept to his word. Since you have already achieved your goal, why was there a need to go so far? Why did you still have to decapitate him? Even if you are an assassin, isn't that too much? What about your promise? Don't you have the pride of a martial cultivator? Ling Jian, who was already on the horse, turned around and his eyes looked as though they were mocking Ling Tian. As though he was looking at an idiot, he said, "If you paid me silver to kill someone, what would I use as proof that I had killed that person? Just my words?" As he replied, his tone already sounded impatient. In truth, in his heart Ling Jian was indeed growing impatient. "I am here to kill someone, and who are you to interfere with my affairs? Why are you acting like you are the boss around here? Is it a big deal for you to be skilled in martial arts? You are still far from my young noble. Why are you being so arrogant? To think that you will talk to an assassin about a martial artist's pride. I'm so sorry, I am only my young noble's sword. I am not a stubborn-minded cultivator." Ling Tian let out a grunt. "How can a despicable person like you be fit to use a sword? Where are you going? Watch my sword." His sturdy body jumped into the air as his sword slashed down. Chapter 172, Reverse Scale of an Assassin. Ling Jian let out an indifferent chuckle, completely ignoring Ling Tian. In response to the nudge of his heels, the spirited horse gave out a neigh and galloped away. Ling Tian's body darted into the air like a dragon soaring out from the ocean, his sword shooting out at a lightning-fast speed. Knowing that this burly man had an incredible ability, Ling Jian didn't dare be careless. With a shang, his sword was brandished, meeting Ling Tian's blade head-on. As the two swords collided, their bodies shook from the impact and Ling Tian's ferocious charge was stopped. As the force from his jump ran out, he had no choice but to land back on the ground. But because Ling Jian was already on a horse, he sped up even further from the blow. Ling Tian was angered to the point that steam could be seen rising from the top of his head. However, he also knew that Ling Jian's movement technique was far superior to his. If Ling Jian really wanted to leave, it would be impossible to hold him back. Since his sword was unable to keep Ling Jian behind, he could only watch as Ling Jian escaped. He couldn't help but spit on the ground as he scolded, "I wonder what kind of a despicable scum and savage animal would be able to train such an inhumane assassin. For such a person to remain alive, it is going against the law of the heavens." Ling Tian was really only trying to vent the pent-up anger in his heart. After all, an assassin would never fall for such a provocation, and Ling Tian had already given up the thought of fighting Ling Jian. However, Ling Tian didn't know that his moment of carelessness had indeed touched Ling Jian's reverse scale. The huge battle which could have been avoided had broken out again. In the next instant, Ling Tian suddenly felt that there was something wrong with the atmosphere around him as a cold and dense killing intent surrounded him. Lifting up his head, he saw a black-dressed man with hateful eyes glaring at him. The black-dressed man was like a sharp sword out of its sheath, with a strong battle intent and desire to massacre the world. It was Ling Jian who had already left. At this moment, the dense killing intent and almost crazed battle intent from Ling Jian startled Ling Tian. What could have enraged this fellow? It was the last phrase spoken by Ling Tian that had enraged Ling Jian. Everyone had a bottom line in their hearts. If someone were to cross that line, even a spineless man would fly into a rage. Ling Tian was the reverse scale in Ling Jian's heart. Anyone who dares to humiliate my young noble must pay the price. The price of his life. If it isn't that person's life, it will be my own life. Ling Tian's final phrase had insulted Ling Tian. This was something unforgivable in Ling Jian's heart. If Ling Tian were to scold Ling Jian would have been long gone already. But now that he had insulted Ling Tian, this was something that Ling Jian would never be able to endure. Just this single phrase had determined that the both of them would not stop until one of them died. If you humiliate the young noble, die. No matter who you are. A life and death battle today can no longer be avoided, it is either your death or mine. The only thing able to wash away such humiliation would be fresh blood. Oi! Brat, what's wrong? Why aren't you leaving already? Ling Tian couldn't help but grow excited, as his aura also began to build up. All is fine as long as you are back. Third Master Yu will teach you a good lesson. You deserve to die. With a chilly tone, Ling Jian said calmly, emphasizing on every single word. You actually dare to insult the deity in my heart. While Ling Jian still looked emotionless, rage was burning deep in his heart. At this moment, he had already forgotten about the gap between the both of them. There was only a single thought in his heart: kill him. Ha ha ha. Ling Tian let out a laugh and said with disdain, just what I wanted. This is not the best place for us to fight, follow me. As he said that, Ling Tian flew up his horse and Ling Jian followed him without hesitation. In his eyes, only the person who had insulted his young noble existed. A person who was about to fight him to the death. The two horses then left one after another. Ling Jian's chilly gaze locked onto Ling Tian with an aura of ruthlessness exploding from his body. So what if your martial arts are higher than mine? Will I, Ling Jian, be afraid of you? Even if I cannot win against you, I am confident of dragging you with me to hell. I, Ling Jian, am my young noble's sword. Ling Tian's sword. I will never disgrace the name of my young noble. As long as I have a single breath left, no one can insult the young noble in front of me. So what if I win? So what if I lose? So what if I live? So what if I die? They are all not to be feared. By the river, a peach forest. Spring had ended and it was the beginning of summer. The originally barren forest was now filled with small fingernail-sized peaches all over the trees. Below the trees, the originally intoxicating petals had already disappeared from the world because of a heavy rain, leaving behind the fragrant earth. Even upon leaving the branches of the tree, the petals would continue to guard the tree by turning into fertilizer. However, would the pride of a martial artist or the reverse scale of an assassin be protected today? At this moment, numerous sword energies had already filled the peach forest. Occasionally, there would be the sounds of metal clashing. All of a sudden, a loud bang was heard, followed by a long silence. Your martial arts aren't too bad. Ling Tian said while panting heavily, as traces of injuries could be seen on his body. Looking at Ling Jian, who was opposite him, a trace of pity could be seen in his sharp gaze. The exquisiteness of your swordplay and mystery of your movement technique are things that I have never seen before. The more amazing thing is your ability to combine both of them into one, fully complementing each other. This is indeed a divine skill which I have never witnessed before. It is just a pity that your inner chi is unable to keep up with it, incomparable to the density of my decades worth of cultivation. So, you have lost. Opposite him, Ling Jian's black clothes were damaged in multiple areas, but an obvious wound couldn't be seen. His black mask had already fallen off, revealing a pale-looking face with a trace of blood at the corner of his lips. While he did not have any physical wounds, it didn't mean that Ling Jian had the upper hand. In fact, Ling Jian had suffered a serious internal injury because of his weaker inner chi. If it wasn't for the long periods of intense training, he would have already collapsed onto the floor. While his long sword was still in his hand, it was drooping towards the ground. Anyone with a keen eye would be able to tell that he no longer had any strength to fight. Despite the circumstances, Ling Jian's back was still straight and his expression calm. It was as though he was indifferent towards life and death. However, the killing intent in his eyes was still burning with a resolute gaze. They had fought for a full 2 hours. In the face of the relentless attacks from an expert like Ling Tian, Ling Jian had eventually lost. With a huge difference in power, his exquisite swordplay and mysterious movement technique were still unable to turn the situation around. So what if I am inferior to you? Ling Jian lifted his head up proudly, looking at the sword point which was a few feet away from him. With a light flick of his opponent's hand, it would easily pierce his throat, ending his life. Ling Jian let out a self-deprecating laugh before calmly saying, "But I am not dead yet. As long as you do not kill me, I have not lost yet. I admit that I am inferior to you, but I have not been defeated yet. As long as I still have my life, I have not been defeated. If I am unable to treat my own life with indifference, then I am unqualified to be an assassin. Since I am coming out to kill, I must be prepared to be killed. So what if I die? I will just enter into the next cycle of reincarnation." At this moment, Ling Jian remembered what Ling Tian had said to him before, as he had just unknowingly recited it. The emotionless and distant gaze of Ling Tian then appeared in his heart. "Young noble, Ling Jian is going. Please take good care of yourself. If there is a next life, I will still be young noble's sword." Ling Tian was dumbfounded. He never imagined that this young opponent in front of him would treat death with such magnanimity. Or perhaps was he just trying to deny his loss? Ling Tian couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration in his heart. Such talent, such a breadth of mind, such martial arts. How rare is it? Even if his inner chi was weak, that is only in comparison to me. In fact, did I have such a cultivation before I was 20? It is just such a pity for this outstanding young man to walk such a path of no return. Ling Tian was in a dilemma. In his heart, he wasn't willing to destroy such a talent by his own hands. In the instant that he had torn off Ling Jian's mask, he had almost cried out in shock. This expert cold-blooded killer only looked like he was 17. Ling Tian was extremely clear about how difficult it was for a 17-year-old to attain such a level of martial arts. This was an incredulous miracle. Just how much suffering did this teen face to attain such martial arts? A talented person wouldn't be able to turn into an expert just by eating a few hundred-year-old ginseng. To become the epitome of martial arts, one could only rely on his talent, sweat and hard work. Ling Tian himself was a martial arts fanatic. Ever since he was young, he relied on an exceptional amount of hard work and bitter cultivation to become then 3 times stronger than his peers. When anyone from the Yu family saw the way that he cultivated, all of their mouths would open wide in shock. That was no longer cultivating, that was no different from self-torture. However, it was also his crazed cultivation which gave him the ability to look down on the world with pride. But facing this teen in front of him, Ling Tian felt as though he had no right to be proud. The moment Ling Tian tore off the mask on Ling Jian's face, that sense of pride had disappeared completely. Even after cultivating in such a crazed manner, was I even half as good as this teen when I was his age? Impossible. In other words, just what kind of bitterness did this teen suffer to attain such a cultivation? Chapter 173, Life and Death. Mutual appreciation? In fact, it was a one-sided appreciation from Ling Tian. Young man, as long as you will promise me that you will stop killing and leave your assassin's organization, I will spare your life. How about that? Ling Tian said with regret. If you are afraid that this organization will seek trouble with you after leaving, I will help you. In this world, there isn't anything that I, Third Master Yu, can't do. I do not need you to serve me, and you will still be a free man. You just need to agree to my condition. After the fierce battle, Ling Tian truly treasured this talent in front of him. Looking at this stubborn teen, it was as though Ling Tian could see the stubbornness he had when he was younger. Idiot. With heavy panting, Ling Jian's eyes never revealed the trace of hesitation. I really don't want to kill you. Perhaps, you can give me a reason to not kill you? When he said that, a rare look of seriousness appeared on Ling Tian's bearded face. It was obvious that everything he said was from the bottom of his heart. For example, was that fatty your enemy? Give me a reason, any reason. I am willing to believe you. I can definitely believe you. Ling Jian's lips twitched as a trace of ridicule could be seen in his eyes. With arrogance, he said, no reason at all. I will kill whoever I want to. I do not need anyone's pity. Who do you think you are? Do you think I am fighting you because of that fatty? I only want you dead. I still want you dead. You. Ling Tian almost fainted from anger. Damn it, this daddy here really doesn't want to kill you. I have already said that I will definitely believe you regardless of the reason. Can't you just say that the fatty was your enemy? I already reminded you that I just need an excuse to retreat. I just need a reason not to kill you. Even if you were to turn and run away, I would definitely not give chase to you. But you are still standing rooted to the ground without taking a single step. Not to mention your feet, even your gaze shows no signs of backing off. You are still looking at me like I am your mortal enemy. Ling Tian was sure that if he were to give this black-dressed man in front of him a chance, this black-dressed man would definitely stab him in the throat without any hesitation. Did I dig up your family's grave? Why are you staring at me with such hatred? Ling Tian was completely depressed in his heart. What a stone. Ling Tian scolded with a roar, do you just have to kill? With your abilities, you would not starve to death no matter what you do. Don't force me to kill you. I really don't want to kill you. The extremely careless Third Master Yu never noticed that Ling Jian had already locked his sights on him. Ha ha ha. Ling Jian laughed out loud as a trace of blood flowed down the corner of his lips, soft-hearted. On just this point alone, you do not deserve to be a martial artist. Idiot. Ever since the both of them had met, this was the first time Ling Jian had said so much. Ling Jian smiled and stepped forward towards the sword point that he was looking at. His movements were resolute and his eyes burning. Ling Tian subconsciously took a step back as perspiration flowed down his face. Let me say this again, don't force me. I don't want to kill a martial arts talent. Don't you know that this world is one where the strong prey on the weak? Where the strong would rule the world. Ling Jian continued walking forward. In this moment of life and death, the emotions which Ling Jian had been hiding in his heart burst forth. Did you know that I was originally a beggar at the mercy of the world? It was because of my hard work and sacrifice that I became stronger than others. So, I can be the calm judge of someone else's life. Because they did not work hard and did not make any sacrifices, they deserve to die. For a weakling to die in the hands of someone strong, that is an ironclad rule which will never change. You are asking me why? Ha ha ha. What a joke. Who do you think you are? Idiot. Ling Jian burst out into another wave of laughter as a crazed look could be seen in his eyes. Because I am stronger than them. This is the reason. If I can become even stronger, I can kill everyone in the world. They are only a bunch of ants. Since living is nothing more than torture to them, why not send them into reincarnation sooner? Are you satisfied now? Ha ha ha, is this reason enough? Let me tell you, if you don't kill me today, I will definitely continue killing tomorrow. Let me go? Pity me? What a joke. You idiot. Ling Jian then snorted disdainfully, who do you think you are? You are only a hypocritic gentleman from an aristocratic family wearing a jacket of rotten righteousness. You want to pity me? Do you have the right? Idiot. Ling Jian never imagined that he would say so many words in a single day. Was it because he felt fear in his heart in the face of death? Ling Jian couldn't help but think to himself with self-mockery. Ling Jian had never believed these people who came from the large aristocratic families. In his heart, the rules were simple. The victor would be alive while death awaited the one who was defeated. There were no other choices. He would rather be sliced up into pieces than to be under the threat of a sword and plead for his life. Even if there was a special reason, Ling Jian would never say it in such a scenario. Ling Jian's arrogance could be said to be even higher than Ling Tian's. Ling Tian let out a loud roar with his eyes as wide as saucers and his facial hair standing up straight. The muscles on his face also began to contort as he let out a violent roar from anger. Since you are longing for death, this daddy here will fulfill your wish. With a flick of his wrist, his sword struck out like a vicious dragon. The target was Ling Jian's throat. Ling Jian was suffering from serious internal injuries and didn't have the strength to retaliate at all. He looked at the sword calmly without a trace of emotion on his face. The tip of the sword had penetrated the skin. Blood had begun to flow out. Ding! Like a shooting star, a bright flash of light shot over at an unbelievable speed, striking Ling Tian's sword. Ling Tian's body shook. That bright light was imbued with the purest Jian inner chi. It had pushed aside Ling Tian's full force strike from the mere force of the attack. Just when the tip of the sword had pierced through the skin, it was deflected to the side. While blood was spewing out from Ling Jian's throat, it was only a shallow wound. The scene looked extremely bloody, but Ling Jian's life was not in danger. Ling Tian's sword let out a buzz, as it was still vibrating from the force of the strike. This sword, the distress of autumn, was the proud possession of Ling Tian. It was one of the most famous weapons in the Heavenly Star continent. If not, the force from that blow would have definitely destroyed the sword. After receiving such a forceful blow, Ling Tian only managed to stabilize his body after taking 7 or 8 steps back. He was shocked in his heart. There is actually such an expert in this place. Who is he? His inner strength is more than a level higher than this black-dressed man. It is probably comparable to my own inner strength. Don't tell me the old is here after beating up the young? Is this person the backing of the black-dressed man? Ling Jian's originally calm face revealed a look of gratitude, and a fire seemed to have ignited in his eyes. It was as though a person who was about to die from thirst in the desert had found a clear spring in front of him. An agitated cry from the depths of his heart sounded, "Young noble." Ling Tian looked over and saw a tall young man dressed in white with a white cloth covering his face. The white-dressed man stood 50 feet away on top of a peach tree with his hands empty as though he didn't have a weapon on him. He was looking emotionlessly at Ling Tian, as though he was staring at a lifeless corpse. There was a short blade lying on the ground at the place where the white light had smashed against his sword. It reflected the bright sunlight, letting out a resplendent glow. Ling Jian's originally straight back began to sway. Even in the face of death, Ling Jian had stood up as straight as a spear, without the slightest bit of movement or fear. But when this white-dressed man appeared, a huge burden seemed to have been lifted off Ling Jian's heart, and his body began to relax. It was as though Ling Jian didn't need to bother about anything in the world with this white-dressed man present. Ling Jian then gradually sat down on the ground, his face void of the excitement from being alive, but filled with the reverence of a young child staring at an emperor. The white-dressed man was Ling Tian. When he was rushing towards the bridge, he heard a loud roar from the peach forest and sprinted all the way here, saving Ling Jian from that fatal strike. He couldn't help but feel lucky in his heart. If he had come a step later, the consequences would have been dire. Everything would have changed as well. "Who are you?" Looking at that icy glare from the white-dressed man, Ling Tian knew that things wouldn't end so easily today. At the same time, he also let out a huge sigh in his heart. From the expression of these two fellows, it looked like they were carved from the same mold, the same distant look in their eyes, the same arrogance in their gaze, and the same indifference with regards to the lives of those in the world. Another strange expert. However, this strange expert seems to be even stronger than the previous one. That black-dressed brat is already a top-notch assassin in the world today. However, this white-dressed young man is not just a level higher than him. If that black-dressed man was the king of assassins, then this white-dressed man would be the emperor of the kings, a true reaper of death. From that battle with the black-dressed brat, I have spent over 70% of all my strength. To face this expert who is even scarier than that black-dressed man, it is going to be extremely dangerous. At this moment, Ling Tian was completely enraged. The moment he saw the miserable condition that Ling Jian was in, a brutal and vicious feeling rose in his heart. Thinking about how that burly man was about to pierce Ling Jian's throat, a boundless killing intent shot into the sky. Chapter 174, Taking Action in Rage. Ling Tian's body moved as he covered the 50 feet in an instant. His palm had already struck out with an earth-shattering momentum. Clean and swift without a moment of hesitation and without a single sign. By the time Ling Tian felt that young man move, the palm of the young man was already above his forehead. It was as though the young man had already been there from the start. With a loud roar, his distress of autumn slashed upwards with the arc of a rainbow. Ling Tian's white clothes were fluttering as he made an agile flip in midair and appeared in another direction. Without the slightest bit of reduction in force, his palm smashed down once more. Ling Tian let out a weird cry as the sword in his right hand pierced forward. At the same time, he gathered his remaining inner chi on his left palm and launched another attack. All these were done without the slightest bit of delay, fully displaying his demeanor of an expert. A bright smile was on Ling Tian's face as the inner chi on his left palm turned gentle, directing Ling Tian's sword to the side with a simple flick of his left hand. His right hand continued on without the slightest bit of delay, with the strength of the blow increasing even more. Hong! Both their palms collided. A gust of wind was sent out in all directions. Ling Tian's body flew up from the ground, flying back a total of 30 feet and stopping only when he had crashed into a peach tree. He was shocked as he thought, what dense inner strength. Ling Tian's inner strength was already extremely dense and Ling Tian was a notch stronger than him. While he was exhausted from the fight with Ling Jian, Ling Jian's single palm strike was insufficient to inflict serious injuries on him. While Ling Tian was still in a daze from the shock brought from Ling Tian's martial arts, he felt a gust of wind approaching him as Ling Tian's palm descended again with a mighty aura. From the start to the end, Ling Tian had been spiraling around in the air without touching the ground. What kind of martial arts is this? Ling Tian thought. Ling Tian felt his soul was about to leave him as he gathered some inner chi to receive the palm strike with both his hands. At this moment, he didn't have enough time to retaliate with his sword and could only abandon it. With another bang, Ling Tian's burly body rolled away like a ball. He didn't want to be reduced to such an embarrassing state, but Ling Tian's palm strike was far too tyrannical. The strength of the blow sent Ling Tian rolling for quite a distance without stopping. Only after 40 feet did Ling Tian use his palms to prop himself up. His face was completely red as he spit out a mouthful of blood. This was because Ling Tian had a profound inner strength with a body fitter than most others. If it was anyone else, that person would have definitely died on the spot. After unleashing 3 attacks, Ling Tian's inner chi was also almost spent. He was not a celestial after all, and it was impossible for him to float in midair forever. Ling Tian's body shifted as his toes lightly landed on the branch of a peach tree. His white robes fluttered in the wind as his tall body was like a dragon descending from the skies, a phoenix rising to the heavens. A dense killing intent emanated from his eyes as he circulated his inner chi and struck out without any mercy at Ling Tian for the 4th time. You dare to harm my brother? Regardless of who you are, there is only a single path. That is, death. Go and die. As this palm struck down, Ling Tian had no way to avoid it at all. His strength had already been exhausted completely from the previous 3 exchanges. With a long sigh, he closed his eyes and awaited his death. At the same time, he was depressed as he thought, in all my life, I, Ling Tian, prided myself on my martial arts. But, I actually met 2 powerful opponents in a single day. The height of that white-dressed man's martial arts is something that I have never seen before in my life. At the same time, Ling Tian felt a trace of regret in his heart. Such an expert, how great would it be to face him with my full strength? What a pity. He did indeed live up to his name of being a martial arts fanatic. Even when his life was reaching its end, he was still thinking about exchanging pointers with someone else. He also didn't disgrace the title of being a martial artist. A cruel smile could be seen on Ling Tian's lips as his palm struck down without mercy. Ling Tian was about to die. Young noble, please spare him. From afar, Ling Jian's anxious voice sounded. Ling Tian frowned for an instant and his palm turned to the side, brushing past Ling Tian and smashing into a nearby peach tree. With a caca sound, the peach tree was split into 2 with the upper half of it being sent flying 70 feet away. Borrowing the force of the rebound, Ling Tian's body, which had been charging forward, suddenly stopped in midair and began moving backward. Ling Tian could only feel his clothes fluttering as he awaited his death. All of a sudden, he heard the voice and his body became relaxed, with that frightening pressure disappearing into thin air. He couldn't help but open his eyes and take a doubtful look. When he had just opened his eyes, he witnessed Ling Tian stopping in midair and retreating with his mystical movement techniques. Witnessing such a scene, Ling Tian's eyeballs almost popped out from the shock. This mystical movement technique was even more shocking than him changing directions in midair. If an ordinary expert were to use such a movement technique, which went against common sense, the meridians in his body would definitely go crazy and he would experience cultivation deviation. However, this white-dressed man was able to do it as though it was an extremely simple thing. Not only that, he had actually retreated without even looking back, landing right beside Ling Jian without any error in his position. Just this movement technique alone was enough to make Ling Tian accept his loss. Just how did he cultivate such a movement technique? How are your injuries? Looking at Ling Jian's pale face, Ling Tian asked with concern. They aren't serious, I won't die from them. They are all superficial wounds, and I will recover in 2 to 3 days. Ling Jian tried to stand up. Ling Tian was standing up, but he was still seated, making Ling Jian feel extremely weird. Even though he was seriously injured, this was still unacceptable. Ling Tian stretched out a hand and pressed on Ling Jian's shoulders, signaling him to stay still. Then, Ling Jian felt a wave of pure inner chi entering his body from an acupoint on his shoulders. This warm energy made a full circulation around all of his meridians, making Ling Jian feel a warmth of comfort. Under the aid of the pure inner chi, Ling Jian's injuries were recovering quickly. After Ling Tian circulated his inner chi for a total of 9 cycles, he withdrew his inner chi. Ling Jian's injuries were no longer a concern and he would be able to deal with them himself. Only then did Ling Tian let out a sigh of relief. "Why did you stop me from killing him?" Ling Tian asked with dissatisfaction, while he used his chin to point to the cross-legged Yu Man Tian. As Ling Tian said that, even Yu Man Tian couldn't help but widen his ears with curiosity. Why did this black-dressed man want to save me despite me trying to kill him previously? This person isn't too bad. Young noble, he is just a little too old-fashioned. He could have killed me much earlier but did not do so because he treasured my talent. The reason why he took action in the end was because I forced him, so I am indebted to him. Ling Jian opened his eyes and looked at Ling Tian with sincerity. While Ling Jian was proud and didn't lose often, he would never deny a loss. Despite not being willing to give in, he felt that receiving favor from someone else was a different matter. Even if a normal person felt that it was the same thing, things were different when it came to Ling Jian. Damn it. So you aren't an idiot. You actually knew that this daddy here couldn't bear to kill you. Then why are you still like a brick? This daddy here is just and honorable for treasuring a talent. In what way am I old-fashioned? Yu Man Tian scolded out, not bothering to thank Ling Jian for saving his life. Instead, he was complaining about being scolded as old-fashioned. Damn it, this daddy here can't stand those old-fashioned old fogies the most, and you actually dared to say that I am old-fashioned. Oh, so it is mutual appreciation. If that's the case, you can settle this score yourself in future. Ling Tian said with a meaningful smile, revealing the thoughts in Ling Jian's heart. Being seen through by Ling Tian, Ling Jian's face turned red and he lowered his voice, speaking at a volume where only Ling Tian could hear. This person called himself Third Master. This subordinate thinks that he is from the Yu family. In fact, his status shouldn't be too low and he may even be the third brother of Yu Man Lu, Yu Man Tian. While young noble isn't afraid of him, his presence may bring some troubles. Ling Tian's eyes narrowed as he let out a hearty laugh while patting Ling Jian on the shoulders. Not bad, Ling Jian, you are getting smarter. However, this pat was right on Ling Jian's wounds, making him let out a muffled groan. Ling Jian's cold face suddenly turned extremely bitter. Is it painful? While Ling Tian's smile was warm and filled with concern, Ling Jian felt himself shiver from seeing such an expression. Every time Ling Tian showed such an expression, his good days would be coming. Indeed, Ling Tian's face then changed. Remember this painful lesson. How many times must I repeat myself before you will change this wretched habit of yours? If you only know how to advance but don't know how to retreat, you will suffer losses for sure. Have you learned your lesson yet? If you really wanted to go, could this burly and clumsy bear ever catch up to your movement technique? Damn BSD road. Will you only be happy after playing your life away? Don't forget that your life belongs to this young noble. Have you even asked this young noble before playing with your life? Idiot. Ling Tian was indeed fuming. Ling Tian had nagged Ling Jian about this bad habit of his many times already. He would always promise Ling Tian obediently but forget about it when his hot blood boiled. This injury would probably help to change this straightforward and unbending attitude of his. Ling Jian lowered his head and accepted his scolding without a single word. He didn't say that he couldn't retreat because of Yu Man Tian's insult towards his young noble. However, he felt a deep sense of warmth in his heart. The rain had just passed, and the road was all muddy. Despite that, his young noble was able to detect his danger from a slight time difference and came to save him personally. Looking at Ling Tian's fatigued eyes, Ling Jian knew that his young noble must have sprinted here at top speed all the way with his superior movement techniques and dense inner strength. If not, how would it be possible for him to travel a few hundred miles in such a short amount of time? No matter how powerful his young noble was, it was definitely an exhausting thing for him to travel such a far distance in such a short time. Chapter 175, Entering Sky Bearing. Ling Jian's eyes began to tear up subconsciously. Although he was being reprimanded, he felt a sense of bliss and warmth in his heart. On the other hand, Ling Tian was extremely displeased. "Oi, who are you talking about? White-dressed brat, who are you calling a clumsy bear? This third master is just exhausted from my battle with that brat, thus letting you gain the upper hand. Do you really think that your martial arts are higher than this third master? What a naive joke. When this third master's injuries are healed, I will exchange pointers with you again to let you know my prowess. Did you hear that, brat?" "Oh?" Ling Tian said with a mocking smile, "Then was I mistaken just now? Wasn't the one pathetically running for their life while rolling on the floor you, third master?" "You bst road." Ling Tian stood up in anger. While his life was in the hands of the other party, third master Yu was the kind of person who would scold when he wanted to without the least bit of restraint. "When this third master's injuries are recovered, I will let you know my prowess. I will let you know why the flowers are red." "Third master? So you are the third in line? I wonder what family you belong to?" Ling Tian said with a smile. This third master title reminded Ling Tian of some memory, making him think about a falcon in the mountain. "I am third master of. Why do you care who I am?" Ling Tian raised his head up proudly. Just when he wanted to reveal his own family, he remembered that he had just been beaten up badly. If he were to reveal his identity, wouldn't that end up disgracing his Yu family? Thus, he swallowed the words which were at the very corner of his lips. "Oh, if that's the case, I won't say anything more. You treasure my brother, and my brother asked me to spare you. This young noble will not make things difficult for you. Goodbye." Ling Tian calmly said and walked to Ling Jian. "Wait." Ling Tian quickly called out to them. "What a joke, if you are going to leave like that, how am I going to find you when my injuries are recovered? It isn't a problem if you want to leave. You have to first tell me what your name is. What is your brother's name? Where do you stay at? Where can this third master find you brothers?" Ling Tian asked in a bossy manner. He hadn't noticed that his body was covered in mud with his clothes in tatters from rolling on the ground. He looked extremely pathetic, and a beggar on the streets was probably better dressed than him. "Oh, third master, everyone else calls me young noble. You can call me that as well," Ling Tian said calmly without turning back. "Calling yourself third master, you have already exposed your identity completely and you still think that we don't know about it? If that's the case, this young noble will let you have a taste of your own medicine to frustrate you to death." Ling Tian was filled with depression. Thinking about it, it also made sense to him. He refused to answer the other party previously, and the other party would obviously not answer him either. Who would be so foolish to expose their identities to their enemy? After that short meditation, Ling Tian felt himself recover a little already. Seeing that Ling Tian was about to leave, he couldn't help but approach them and say, "This third master here has nothing else better to do. Seeing that you are bringing a casualty along, why don't I protect you guys along the way? Anyway, this person was injured by me. Since you guys have already let me off, this third master wouldn't feel good if something happened to you along the way." As Ling Tian said that, not to mention Ling Tian, even the heavily injured Ling Jian could not help but be dumbfounded. This was the first time they saw someone as thick-skinned as this third master Yu. He was obviously the one who was beaten you up so badly just now, and he actually had the cheek to proclaim that he could protect others. As though he also felt slightly embarrassed, Ling Tian rubbed his head and said, "Let this third master tell you, you were only able to gain the upper hand previously because I was exhausted and agitated by this black-dressed brat. I am not trying to brag, but if you let this third master recover fully, you will definitely not be my opponent. This third master's inner strength is far denser than yours. Brat, do you dare to admit that?" Ling Tian and Ling Jian stared at each other and couldn't help but burst out laughing. It was as though they had heard the biggest joke in the world. laughing until their bodies rocked back and forth. With injuries on his body, Ling Jian began to cough after laughing for a moment. However, he just couldn't stop himself from laughing to the point his face was pale. Preposterous! Ling Tian shouted out, "What's so funny? Shall we have another fight now? This third master's inner strength is definitely denser than yours. If I cannot win against you. After stuttering for a long while, he just couldn't complete the sentence. He was well aware of his own condition and he knew that he wouldn't be able to win for sure. While Ling Tian's inner strength was indeed denser than Ling Tian's, it was only limited to his cultivation. As for the other aspects such as martial skills or movement techniques, the two of them were not even on the same level. Even if they were to only compete in inner strength, Ling Tian might not win. Previously, Ling Tian was able to fight Yi Chen to a standstill in terms of inner strength. While Ling Tian's inner strength was profound, he was still a far cry from Yi Chen. Ling Tian said with a smile, "If you are not able to reduce me to a state where I am not as suave and carefree as I currently am, will third master admit his loss?" As Ling Tian said that, Ling Jian found it even more difficult to control his laughter. The tongue of his young noble was just far too sharp. He was just too good at mocking someone. Ling Tian responded with a spitting sound. While he did think that this brat in front of him was suave and carefree, it was impossible for him to admit that fact. After a while, Ling Tian said, "Since third master doesn't want to admit his loss, you can just follow us. When you are fully recovered, this young noble will exchange pointers with you again. How about that? Since this brother of mine also seems to think highly of third master." In Ling Tian's heart, he also admired Ling Tian's martial arts. The sturdiness of this third master was indeed frightening. After fighting Ling Jian for such a long time, being riddled with injuries and having his inner qi exhausted, Ling Tian was still able to withstand 3 palms from himself. After that, Ling Tian only spat out a small mouthful of blood and rolled a few times. After a short meditation, Ling Tian was able to jump back up with vigor. The sturdiness of his body could be easily witnessed. Ever since Ling Tian was born into this world, apart from Yi Chen, this third master Yu would probably be ranked second amongst all the people he had met. Ever since Ling Jian said that he was probably the third master of the Yu family, Ling Tian had immediately guessed his identity. He was originally worried that the colors of this sky-bearing gathering would be less vibrant without the Yu family, but he never expected this third master Yu to appear from out of nowhere. To Ling Tian, this was just like a golden ingot that fell from heaven, smashing right into his head. If he didn't make use of this precious resource, he wouldn't be called Ling Tian. Rejecting Ling Tian's desire to follow them had been a lie in the first place. Seeing that he was really anxious, Ling Tian would definitely not chase him away. Instead, he displayed the intentions to befriend him. 3 people rode on 2 horses, Ling Tian and Ling Jian on one and Ling Tian on another. Along the way, the 3 of them recovered from their injuries as they joked together. With Ling Tian's eloquence, he was naturally able to easily encourage conversation with Ling Tian. Ling Tian was filled with smiles along the way, talking about the national affairs of the continent and completely forgetting how he had just suffered a loss in Ling Tian's hands. Along the way, they chatted about the various characters on the continent and discussed the different martial arts with a kind of heroes of the world, who else can they be but us, feeling. However, Ling Tian's many years of experience were indeed not empty words, and both Ling Tian and Ling Jian felt like they had received plenty from their conversations. Along the way, Ling Tian and Ling Jian both joined hands to probe about the Yu family from Ling Tian. Of course, they only asked some surface-level questions and Ling Tian never noticed that the both of them were trying to probe for information. The straightforward Ling Tian then opened his mouth and talked without restraint about the things he knew. The 3 of them then traveled along slowly, with two wise guys acting foolish and another completely foolish fellow, moving harmoniously towards the sky-bearing city. By the time they arrived at the sky-bearing city, the three of them were already close to the point of addressing each other as brothers. The night was dark. I say, martial arts expert third master, do you want to stay at this young noble's residence? Anyway, this young noble does admire an expert like you, how about that? Ling Tian was obviously trying to be hypocritically friendly. However, this completely described the saying, despite the 1,000 considerations of a wise man, he will definitely fail once. Ling Tian did not think about what kind of person Yu Man Tian was. Even if Ling Tian was just asking out of courtesy, he would definitely take it for real. Indeed, as Yu Man Tian heard that, he was filled with a temptation to accept Ling Tian's offer. Ling Tian couldn't help but cry out bitterly in his heart, if this foolish third master can't see the true meaning behind my words and chooses to accept the offer, it will really be the luck of a foolish man. What should I do? Bring him to the Ling residence? That obviously isn't a practical solution. Thankfully, Yu Man Tian mulled over the matter for a long time before saying with regret, "Thank you, but I need to find my niece first and I also have something important to do." "Brother, where do you stay at? Why not tell me so we can have a good fight after my injuries are recovered? I really do admire you and that black-dressed brat." Ling Tian rolled his eyes and said, "Hee, third master, my house is in this sky-bearing city and it isn't time for me to tell you yet. When you are able to find me, we will be considered friends. At that time, I definitely will comply if you want to have a fight. How about that?" Yu Man Tian let out a laugh and said, "Alright, it's a deal." At the same time, he thought to himself, in such a small place, wouldn't it be an extremely easy thing to find someone? Besides, with your martial arts prowess, there will definitely be many who know you in the city.